thank you, Dean Hinton. What she didn't also say is that she has served on the Interfaith Board for 18 years, so we've had a lot of good opportunities to work there. And with the International Quality of Life Awards, I've been thrilled to, not quite all 19 of them, but most of them over the last few years. And it's an absolute delight to be here today. The first thing I would like to do is to thank Dr. Carey for delivering my comments and my speech. He basically covered everything that I'm now going to say to you. The other thing is, when we were looking at what would be a good date to do this, and we finally settled on March 27th, it hadn't occurred to me at that time exactly when March 27th and how significant that day would be in a number of ways. I should tell you, I have a hard time staying on script because the Spirit sometimes moves one. So bear with me. I'm going to try and stay behind the podium. Sometimes it helps with a little discipline. But like most good women, discipline is not my strong suit. So this week is Holy Week. It's Easter. It's the third day of Passover. In some parts of the country, I happen to live in Iowa, and there was a snowstorm Sunday, and although it's actually colder here today than it was when I left Iowa a couple of days ago. But it is officially the beginning of spring. It's a whole sense of renewal. And that fits so completely into what we are talking about and what we are facing and what we have to do. I had the pleasure of doing another TEDx talk for KPMG in New Delhi, in this past October. And the title for that one was Remembering the World. And you know, isn't that an interesting word? We use it all the time, to remember. But we never talk about how we member things. So rebirth, renewal, and I want you to remember remembering, because that is, as Dr. Carey said, exactly what we are doing. We are now, as a culture, as a society, as a world, as communities, as campuses, we are remembering. We are consciously remembering the world. But we're going to do it better. And in fact, when I think about, and I'm really biased about the College of Human Sciences, as Dr. Hinton knows, my paternal grandmother actually finished, I think it was 1917, from Tuskegee down the road. And she later went on to be both the chair of the Department of Business at a small African-American school in Oklahoma called Langston. But prior to that, she taught in what used to be called home economics and now is human sciences. And I grew up as her firstborn grandchild and spending lots of summers and lots of time with her. George Washington Carver was her faculty advisor when she was in undergraduate school. And he taught her how to crochet. See, I'm already off script. He taught her how to crochet, and she gave me a bunch of grapes that he had made for her as a graduation present. But the point I want to make about human sciences, and our campuses in general, but specifically human sciences, is that the disciplines of human science, and I see Carol, and we talk about nutrition, we talk about issues of consumers and purchasing and design. These are the critical issues we have to solve as a society. So all of those title discipline subjects are those things that are most pressing for us to figure out how do we solve today. And that's how I see sustainability. Sustainability, some people spend a lot of time worrying about the title, the word sustainable development. What does it mean? It's a placeholder word. What we are really talking about, and what I've come to realize as I've been listening to people now, I can't believe we're already at 2013, but we are. 13 years into this century. But the word for this century is justice. When you think about it, Mary Robinson is speaking today in London, and I was invited to be there. I would never have gone because I'm here. But the event was for a dear friend that we shared in common. Mary Robinson, in case two of you don't know, was the first female president of Ireland. And she has formed her own foundation among a number of many other honors, and it is the Mary Robinson Foundation for Climate Justice. And all of a sudden, you begin to, the zeitgeist, I suppose is a way of saying it. I just realized the word for the 21st century is justice. We're looking at morality. We're looking at climate issues. We're looking at poverty. We're looking at diversity, gender, racism, bias. All of those factors are focused on how do we make real and tangible justice in people's lives. You'll hear more about this. But the person for whom she's speaking today is Wangari Maathai. Now, I will just ask, anybody out here know who Wangari Maathai, I have to say, unfortunately, was? Well, you will before it's over with today. I saw two hands. In 2004, Wangari Maathai, who was from Kenya, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She had been a friend of mine for at least 17 or 18 years prior to that. We were all part of something called the Women's Environment Development Organization. And it's too long to explain in my 15 and a half minutes that I have left. But I do want you truly to have a lesson. Go back and look up Wangari Maathai. At her memorial service in London and her memorial service in DC, one of the things I said was she planted trees. In fact, the Greenbelt movement that she started planted over 30 million trees. She planted trees, but she harvested democracy. And that democracy is connected to justice. And that is what we are talking about. I know the IPS News Service, and I won't give a lot of facts because I think this is not so much about facts, but it's about what are we going to do. But just last week, they released the report saying 870 million people experience sustained hunger, 2 billion suffer from micronutrient deficiency, and that's the International Food Policy Research Institute, and said part of the problem is that we have had piecemeal approaches to trying to address those things. And I really do feel like I have spent my whole life coming to this moment, this time, this stage, right now. And just as Carrie said, we are here for, I'm sorry, you said that. We are here for a reason. And so we've got to figure out what are we going to do, because that's what it's about now. What are we going to do to make the change, to make the difference in people's lives? Now, I think it's important that you think about how a problem is named, because sometimes a problem is named in a way that throws wonderful energy in it, but won't necessarily solve it. So I want to challenge the structures a little bit, because I think hunger is helping us get there, but hunger is a symptom of the gross global inequalities that we see in our world today. And indeed, there is a deficit of nutrition, but there's also a deficit of justice. And that deficit of nutrition or nourishing calories has resulted in what I think is sometimes a physically manifested obesity and a starvation of thousands and thousands of children, of mothers, of families, and all of us in some way are almost veterans drafted in, and we did not enlist in this political war on food, on distribution, and a visiting of toxins since World War II on our communities and societies. A whole host of endocrine disruptors and a number of other things. We must not be afraid to tell the truth about what's there. And a lot of what is called for us right now is the courage to stand up and pull back the veils of the nice phrases and get to the core. I thought of the Martin Luther King quote, "The fierce urgency of now." All too often people don't add the sentence that came right before that. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. It is striking to me sometimes how much truth, how much knowledge has been out there all along. It becomes wisdom when we make it active, when we make it real, when we make it now. Now, I was going to talk a bit about trans fats and sugars and substitutes, But I think I'm going to skip past that, because what I really want to leave you with is an even greater understanding of how much of these structures were put together for the convenience of the producers, not the quality of life and nutrition of the recipients. And I'm not trying to find blame. I think after a while, once you know the truth and you continue to do the same thing, then you can assign blame. But that's what I mean about having the courage to say the truth of this. I mean, trans fats were always a bad idea. The only thing they actually did do was be stable for vast amounts of transportation over 3,000 miles of this country. Now, why the chemists didn't occur to them that if they stayed stable in the truck, that they would also stay stable in our bodies is beyond me, because it seems self-evident. But we're learning more. But in the meantime, there are vast numbers of people who have suffered tremendously from those. The same thing with endocrine disruptors. But we have to be aware of the words we use. We have to make sure we keep and own and claim our own power and peel away, as I said, the covers of these bandages and exposures of our scars and wounds. And I know that's kind of strong language, but this is serious. And in fact, there is nothing more serious. Bringing sunlight and transparency. I think transparency, there's an organization, Transparency International. It has been the advent of the technology that you were discussing is exactly that kind of transparency that has allowed for an Arab Spring to begin, for pockets of truth to be able to be lifted up, for data to become information, and information to become knowledge, and knowledge to become wisdom, and wisdom then to be turned into action. Now, in every movement, and I think for almost every person, there is a crystallizing moment. And there was a moment for me where I realized I would never ever be a tourist again anywhere on the planet. And it was in 1983. It was in a favela in Rio de Janeiro, and I was with a group of people, and it was incredibly dramatic. We happened to be there, and I saw a mother who had literally made a mush out of newspaper pulp and had formed it into balls, and she was frying it so that her children's bellies would not that night ache from emptiness. And there was a journalist there who wanted the translator to ask her, "Doesn't she know?" And I stopped him. I said, "She's desperate. She's not stupid. She's not ignorant. She is working with what she has. The question should not go to her." And you do know we, of course, made sure that there was food and other things. I don't know how long it lasted, but the children did not have that night. But the question should go not to her, but to a political global food production and distribution system that in a world of such excessive wealth can, with any sense of consciousness or morality, allow such a nutritionally void mush to be a mother's desperate resort for her children. The question's not for her. The question's for us and for the political structures. Hence I say we must not be afraid of the truth, to lay open the wounds we have caused. And I say we, particularly in the United States, live in amazing comfort. Even those who are at the lower end of our spectrum. This is not about blame. This is about awakening to what is happening in the world and how we are connected and are responsible for each other. I sometimes get so excited because I had my maternal grandmother worked on all kinds of issues of poverty. For 33 years, she was part of YWCA in Dallas, Texas, which was actually segregated. But she saw that an arc towards when it would not only not be segregated, but when there would be a joining of hands and a working together on issues. That's distilling an awful lot of work for her life, but it makes the point. She saw a different future. I have, in this 60 years, been able to see, that took a lot of courage to say that, by the way, to see how those pieces of working on poverty, those issues of working in the civil rights movement on racial desegregation or integration and all of those other factors, all of those actions that have been taken, the people like Aldo Leopold or Dean Darling and a whole host of people who have been wonderful on conservation issues, but how those have all now come together. It's almost as though there's this big room, and we're in this room now, and this space is pregnant with this moment for us to do things. And some people came through the door working on poverty, and some came working on economic issues and enterprise and vibrancy, and some came working on social justice, and some came working on this, and some came working on that. And many artists came through many of the other doors, but we are now all in this room together. And that's why I think it is hunger, yes. And there's real work to be done on making sure that food and nutritious food and healthy food is available for many more people. But there is also an understanding that all of this is part of this progressive thrust that we're making towards a very, very different world. One that perhaps for the first time in history understands human rights in a way that we've never understood them before. Understands that we truly are each other's brothers and sisters. That when it happens in Burkina Faso, and when it happens in Palau, and when it happens to the Inuits, and when it happens wherever you name, it's happening to us. It's happening to you. We own each other's issues. Issues seems like such an inadequate word to describe this. In fact, we wax eloquent often about Mother Earth. And I want us to think of mother not as a noun, but as a verb, because it is now time for us to mother Earth, to begin to heal the wounds that have been visited from clear-cutting forests, from scarred soils, from farms and waterways that have been polluted and diminished, from oceans that have been raped of all of their species and depleted, of mountains blown open with so much pain and injury. I can actually hear the pain and injury when this happens. This moment requires us, all of us, to take up arms of knowledge, tools and weapons of truth and wisdom, to fight back with bombs of love and rockets of caring, drones delivering responsibility and connection. It is time to Mother Earth. We need to be the generals and the troops who carry out mindfulness. We need to go no longer ignorantly along aisles of supermarkets without an understanding, but making connections to aisles and rows of crops, knowing that our political and purchasing choices are sowing the seeds of a future that must be different. It is not fair, it is not sustainable, it is not tenable, and it will not last. There will be a harvest, and it is in our hands at this moment in time, because we will now mother Earth as she has done for so many thousands of generations. We've been able to suckle from her bounty, and we will fail if we do not eliminate this issue of violence. And I look at that, we've often had a tendency to make hierarchical structures, sort of ranking your challenges. Take those puppies and lay them horizontally. So it is a continuum of caring and nurturing, not yours is worse than mine. We must make it work for everyone. It is not about ranking. It is about joining. It is about connecting. It is about healing. It is about delivering. As I said, we will now mother Earth as she has done for so long for us. We can no longer allow this to happen for so-called short-term profits, when we are literally stealing from our children, our grandchildren, and 7 generations out. This is a choice from right now, our moment, our decision. We must not fail. We cannot fail. And I know we won't fail. And I also know that those of us who are with white hair will be partners, colleagues, cohorts. We will do this together, because in the same way that it is intergenerational, it is actually interspecies. And I know People look at me sometimes and say, you know, Dianne, you're a little flaky here, honey. And I understand that. I didn't get here overnight, though. I'm really serious. We have to understand this very differently. We can't continue to go on and just make a little bit of impact and a little bit of change. And it's good to do whatever you can, but we have to absolutely remember the world self-consciously, without arrogance, real time. We must do that. Now, I want to close where I began. And just remember, half of what I had to say, you heard. Okay. I want to close where I began. Again, now, this moment, this hour, this time, all of us, we each have something to contribute. No one is going to be able to do it all. Make sure you rest and take care of yourself, because this is a lifelong work and it's tough. But take care of each other and be nourishing and restorative. When we Mother Earth, when we stop just waxing eloquent about her, when we heal these wounds, when we stop the poisoning of our streams and rivers, to clean the air, to emancipate the birds and the critters from a slavery of exposure to pesticides and endocrine disruptors, we have burdened their bodies and the futures to lay down the tools of our destructions. As another shero of mine said, Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. We've had the people who told us what to do. Maybe we couldn't hear it, maybe we didn't listen, but now we know. Now we must do it. Sustainability, justice, hunger, it's all connected. And another world is possible. Arundhati Roy from India said it so beautifully. Shh. Another world is not only possible, she's on her way. I can hear her breathing. Thank you.